Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome to tonight's event, and I would like to introduce Kadida Kenner, who is a tireless advocate for social and economic justice, is the founding CEO of both the New Pennsylvania Project Education Fund and the New Pennsylvania Project. Her driving motivation is to empower the electorate to enthusiastically participate in every election, casting their votes all the way down the entire ballot. In addition to her work with the New Pennsylvania Project, Kadida co-chairs Why Courts Matter Pennsylvania, an advocacy project dedicated to safeguarding the independence of our state and federal courts and educating the electorate about their crucial role. Before her career in issue advocacy, Kadida worked as a director, producer, and writer for HBCU sports television program, creating both live and scripted content in Charlotte, North Carolina, and Atlanta, Georgia. A graduate of Temple University, go Owls, me too. Kadida resides in Chester County and draws inspiration from civil rights organizing icon and Westchester, PA native Bayard Rustin, one of her civil rights heroes. I watched the movie, it was great. And so I'm just going to say, take it away, Kadida.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate you. Hello, NAACP Main Line. Happy to be with you all today. So grateful that you've given me this opportunity. You're going to see me a lot. You're going to
Yeah,
see me a lot before November.
you're our keynote speaker at our Freedom Fund.
Yes. So everyone joining tonight is going to get a little, preemptive look at, some of what I'll talk about when we're together again for that keynote address. And then I will see you again if you are attending the state conference at Robert Morris. Towards the end of the month, I'll be there as well. So happy to be with you on Main Line. I guess I do live on the Main Line. I'm in Chesterbrook. So happy to be with you. Someone's gonna have to like slap me a little bit because I don't belong to a branch since I moved from Harrisburg. So I think I might need to belong to a branch. I think the Main Line is the one I'm supposed to join.
Yes, yes, it is. And we will gladly drive to your home and get you to sign up right live. So just after the meeting,
Yep.
chat, we'll make it happen.
All right. Thank you so much, Brian.
You're welcome.
All right. So tonight, it's a intimate group here. So I'm gonna need some interaction here with you all tonight. Because I've counted so far, I've done 32 of these, and I have 27 more to go before Election Day. And I'm doing these White Courts Matter presentations on Zoom, in person. I've been putting all kinds of miles on my car. And I love to be able to share all this information as if it's the first time I'm sharing it. And I hope that you feel that from me tonight because this is a passion project for me as a voting rights advocate. I just love talking about the court so much. I can do this in my sleep at this point. I'm sure my cat Kaepernick probably knows it too because he's heard me give it on Zoom presentations. So tonight we're going to talk about why courts matter. We're going to talk about why this judicial election is so important for the NAACP members, right? And I'm going to be really real with us tonight so that we can have a really good conversation. I did one the other night with Win with Black Women, and we got so real on that one. And I hope that we can be that way here tonight because this is the time in which we have to have some real good, honest conversations about what's going on and how important this election is to secure all of our future elections. Because we all know that anything that we care about, any right, any freedom we care about as a community, it all comes from our voting rights. If you don't have the power to vote, you have nothing else. And you have no, as John Lewis would say, you have no way to get to everything else that you might care about. So I'm happy to be able to bring this to you tonight. I have a PowerPoint. Don't be too worried about it. It's got a lot of pictures on it, very colorful. I want to keep us feeling good about what we're hearing and seeing tonight. And I hope that at the end of this today, those of you in the Zoom room will reach out to at least 10 people in your life so that you all have been deputized after tonight's presentation, that you can take this back to your communities and share it because I guarantee you there are many people in your life who have no idea we have an election this November. They see the yard signs and they think they're from last year, legitimately. So we have a lot of work to do. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and let's get into this tonight. And don't worry about all my tabs here. I kind of know where things are for the most part. Okay. This one has to go. Okay, let's get into a slideshow. Doop, 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 doop. Okay. Can we see someone come off mute? How's it look? You all right? Good. Thumbs up. I see the thumbs. Okay. Here we go. Why courts and the judicial election matter. So the New Pennsylvania Project, this is an organization that I founded more than 4 years ago at this point, after working for the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center for several years, trying to raise the minimum wage, still stuck at $7.25 an hour, trying to equity fund public schools. Now we have a court ruling, trying to make sure housing is affordable and the rent is too darn high still. Like all of these things that we were trying to do at the Pennsylvania Budget and Policy Center wasn't working because of who it is that's actually out here voting and thinking about who isn't voting. And so I knew that in order to bring about some real change here in the Commonwealth, we were going to have to change who it is that is actually registered to vote and who it is that is showing up to the polls every year, twice a year. So New Pennsylvania Project was founded to do year-round primary focus on voter registration, civic education, engagement, and mobilization. It's not just enough to register somebody to vote, but we've got to give them a reason to come out and actually cast that ballot twice a year. And as an organization, we center communities of color, we center Black, Indigenous, and other people of color. We center immigrant communities, and we center the youth with intention, because these are the communities who are most impacted by decisions government is making, and also the most historically disenfranchised. And so we really feel as an organization that if we're going to get people to feel compelled to actually vote, we've got to make sure that they are prepared to do it and give them a reason to do it. Okay. Again, I'm a history buff. I like to center my conversations in the ancestors. And we lost Congressman John Lewis just a little more than 5 years ago. He lived to a nice age of 80 years old, which is rare for a civil rights icon, right? Thinking about Dr. King, assassinated at 39, Medgar Evers, 37. We just had what would have been the heavenly birthday of some folks here that didn't live beyond 60. So, we have a lot of work to do, and the vote is the most powerful nonviolent change agent that we have in a democratic society. As I said earlier, we care about voting rights, we care about environmental justice, we care about criminal justice, we care about all kinds of things as a community, but none of this is going to work unless we have access to the ballot. And we know, as the NAACP, that if the vote wasn't so important, they wouldn't fight so hard to try to stop us from actually having access to the ballot. So this is where change comes. So I don't think I need to tell this room, but I'll share it anyway. Why elections matter. I think we all know why we vote every year, twice a year in this room. But there are some things that we want to just uplift here today, because this odd year, 2025, an odd year, is the municipal, local, and judicial elections. And unfortunately, turnout in these elections hovers under 30% in most places, when a presidential election like last year was at 77%. And so we leave a very small minority of people to make all of these local and municipal and judicial decisions for us when we don't vote. And if you are someone in the Zoom room today who has ever run for office or may want to run for office or formerly ran for an office, I want you to hear me today say that the number one issue in this country, Black folks, brown folks, all the folks, affordable housing, affordability, trying to just put food on the table, try to clothe kids, get them off to school, and put a roof over their head. And so no matter whatever the office is you may be running for, you should be talking about affordable housing, because that is the number one issue. People make assumptions. They say, I'm going to go and talk to the Black community. I'm going to go to the Black community, and the first thing I'm going to talk about is criminal justice. Like that's the only thing we ever care about. No, the number one concern is housing. People go into a Latino community, they think the number one thing they need to talk about is immigration. No, it's affordable housing. So this is the number one issue, and this is what we need to talk about to drive people to actually vote in this election, because what happens on a local level absolutely impacts how much their housing costs, between taxes for your housing, the affordability of that, and landlord-tenant disputes that can be settled by the courts, which we need to vote on this year as well. Housing is a big deal. Now, I also highlight legalization of marijuana. And I highlight that because of this one statistic I'm going to share with you right now. And that is that Pennsylvania is one of the top 5 places on the planet as it relates to our incarceration rates. Not top 5 in the United States of America. Pennsylvania is in the top 5 on the globe for incarcerating people. We lock up a lot of people in the Commonwealth, a lot of these on drug offenses. And when someone is locked up on a felony conviction, they no longer have the freedom to vote. And then when they're released from prison, they still think they don't have the freedom to vote when they do. And so you have so many people who remain disenfranchised while incarcerated and while out. And so there's so much to be done there as it relates to our incarceration levels here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And then the final 2 here on this board is education, right? Be it the school boards, be it education funding, be it those who make decisions about what our kids get to read or not read. Education is so important. School board elections, that's the starting ground for a lot of, future higher level politicians, right? They start on the school board, then they turn into state reps, and then they turn into U.S. Congress people. And then who knows where they go from there. And so these school board elections are very important and they matter. And unfortunately, so many people do not vote in them. All right. I was told I need to share this information with you today, and I'm going to do that because I'm with the NAACP and we need to hear these alarming numbers about where we are in terms of who is voting and who's not in Pennsylvania. I want you to hear me say today, as an organization that centers communities of color, there are way too many of us eligible to vote and not registered. If you just take Black, Indigenous, and other people of color as a whole, which represents about 25 to 27% of the population in Pennsylvania, 1 in 3 of us almost are eligible to vote and not registered. 29.3% of BIPOC folks eligible to vote and not registered, compared to our white counterparts who are registered at 89%. Right? Only 11, I'm not going to say only, 11% of white folks eligible to vote and not registered. That's an 18-point gap between the two. So we are not having our voices heard at the polls because we're not registered to vote. And if you break it down, and you probably looked at this Native American number and you're like, what? So Black folks, 24% of us eligible to vote, not registered. So that's 1 in 4. Asian American Pacific Islander, more than a third eligible to vote, not registered. Latino community, almost 40% eligible to vote, not registered. Put 10 Latinos in a room, the odds are 4 of them are not registered to vote, eligible and not registered to vote. And then when I see this Native American number, I don't even know what to do with it. I had to ask multiple times, is this accurate? Multiple times I had to ask, is this accurate? And no, we don't have a very large Native American population in Pennsylvania, but we know that so many Native Americans talking about the Lanai, Lenape, and all the others originating here, living here in this land. 97% of Native Americans in Pennsylvania eligible to vote, obviously, not registered. And so there's so much work to do. And I know the NAACP is for all folks of color here. And this is an absolute community that we need to engage with more. Okay, so I just want you to see the numbers because I can tell you percentages and that may not mean a thing. But when you see the raw numbers, maybe this tells a bigger picture. 263,000 Black Pennsylvanians are eligible to vote but not registered. Imagine what could happen if we were actually out here getting registered to vote and voting in every single election. We might have some of our needs met. We might have elected officials who take us seriously in the way they took us seriously when we were voting in record numbers. So we have a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. 1.5 million Pennsylvanians are eligible to vote but not registered as a whole. That number jumps up to 2 million Pennsylvanians when you account for those who are about to be dropped off the voter rolls due to inactivity. They haven't voted in so long that they're about to be taken off the voter rolls. And then that number jumps up to 2.5 million when we think about those who are going to turn 18 years old by November of next year. That's another 500,000 Pennsylvanians will be 18 years old by next year at this time. So we have a lot of work to do. Okay, I told you earlier, I'm someone who honors ancestors and I am a history buff. And we all heard this before in our lives that if we don't learn from our history, we are doomed to repeat it. And I am showing you this picture because that's something that we haven't done. We haven't learned from our history because we're trying to repeat it in this moment. Anyone want to take a guess? I'd love if anyone wants to type in the chat or come off mute. What year do you think this truck is? Anybody? What year do you think this truck's from? So you can give an idea of when these billboards were up in the sky.
Somewhere in the 1940s.
Yeah, 40s, 50s. I'm guessing this is late 40s, early 50s. And I say that because these billboards went up in the sky when Chief Justice of the United States Supreme Court, Earl Warren, and his court were overturning Jim Crow. And you had the John Birch Society putting these billboards up in the sky down south and also in Atlantic City, New Jersey, right? This isn't just a Southern thing. Putting these billboards up in the sky, demanding that our United States Supreme Court justices be impeached, particularly the Chief Justice, Earl Warren. They were very upset with Chief Justice Earl Warren because his court was doing all the overturning of Jim Crow, segregation. They were overturning with Brown versus Board of Education, saying that should go to the same schools together, break bread together, enter the front doors together, use the same water fountains, right? This had the John Birch Society and other folks very upset. It was this court that determined Loving v. Virginia that said you should be able to marry whoever it is that you love, no matter their race. These were the decisions that were coming out of Chief Justice Earl Warren's court in the 1950s. And this upset some folks to the point they wanted to impeach them. So why am I sharing this when tonight we're talking about the Pennsylvania state courts? Well, I'm sharing this because what I said, when we don't learn from our history, we're doomed to repeat it. Or I'd say we might try to remix it. And that's exactly what happened in 2018 when legislators in Harrisburg, upset about the decisions being made by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court, said, let's impeach them. Not happy about the decisions coming out of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court and said, let's impeach them. This was led at the time by State Representative Chris Dush and some others who were passing around a memo trying to see who had an appetite to impeach our Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices. Well, what was it that these Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices did that had these folks so upset? Well, if any of you belong to like fair districts or if you've been paying attention to what's going on in the world as it relates to gerrymandering, you know that Pennsylvania had one of the most, if not the most, gerrymandered congressional district map in the country. And here I am with the good folks of the Main Line, and I want to point us up just a little bit up the road here to Berks County. And I want you to look at Berks County. It's number 6, Congressional District 6, and a little bit of 7. And I want you to see that this is that shape they call Donald Duck kicking Goofy.
Yeah.
It was just a really wacky congressional map. And I'm drawing your attention to the city of Reading. It's that little pinkish purple dot in the middle of 6-7. Well, what this map did is it took the black and brown folks who live in the city of Reading and it put them all together, in that little pink purple dot and moved just those black and brown folks from the city of Reading into Lancaster County. Pick them up, move them into Lancaster County, and it joined Congressional District 16. Why would you do that? Why would legislators who drew this map, so let's not get that confused in case you're getting a mailer that is telling you that the Supreme Court drew this map. It was Pennsylvania legislators who drew this map. Why would that happen? Why would somebody grab the city of Reading and all the black and brown and other folks who live in the city of Reading and stick them into Lancaster? Anybody?
Because Lancaster is full of white folk and their voices got
Absolutely. This is how you dilute the voting power of people. When you take the folks that live in the city of Reading in Berks County, you pick them up and you drop them off in the homogeneous Lancaster County, an area that's not contiguous with whatever else is around the city of Reading, and you stick them there in Lancaster, they no longer have the option. They no longer have the ability to vote for someone of their choosing, someone to represent them, someone who may align with their values, because you stuck them into a county that has nothing to do with the city of Reading. And so it was the Pennsylvania Supreme Court that said this congressional map of 18 districts was a political partisan gerrymander, that the way that the legislators created this map, they created it in a way to benefit their political party. And this map was thrown out. There was other problematic areas in Dauphin County and some other places too. It wasn't just the city of Reading. But as you can see, this map really just doesn't make any sense. And if people say that Pennsylvania is a purple state, you would think that a purple state would have pretty equal representation between the political parties. Well, this map that you voted on, if you were voting in 2014, 2016, you voted on this map. And this map led to 13 Republicans and 5 Democrats sitting in Washington, D.C., representing Pennsylvania. 13 Republicans, 5 Democrats. So this was an unfair partisan gerrymander. And the Pennsylvania Supreme Court said, with a map master, we can't allow legislators to draw these maps anymore because they're not drawing them fairly. We're giving them some chances. They're not doing it. So we're going to find someone to draw a map that is going to be much more fair. And this is the map that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court instituted that we all used to vote on in 2018 and also 2020. This map a lot more fair. And as you can see, the city of Reading is not stuck in Lancaster County. You can see contiguous areas are together, common interests are together. This map isn't perfect, but it is much more fair. And this map led to Pennsylvania having still 18 congressional folks representing us in DC, and they were 9 Democrats and 9 Republicans after the 2018 election, which tells you that this map is what people say Pennsylvania is, a purple state with even amounts of Dems and Republicans. So again, all bad. Gerrymander, all bad. Much better, much better. And this is what had those folks upset. So upset, they wanted to impeach them in the same way we had folks trying to impeach U.S. Supreme Court justices in the 50s. So for those that just need to see it in writing, here it is. What is gerrymandering? It is a way to manipulate boundaries so that it favors one political party or a class. And if I am giving this conversation, this talk to some, a room that may need to hear it in a different way. A different way is when elected officials choose their constituency versus us, the constituency, the voters, actually choosing our elected officials. And it's a way to manipulate the boundaries for electoral wins by a political party, usually when it's political gerrymandering. So there's tactics in which you can gerrymander. You can crack a district, you can pack a district. I think what happened to the city of Reading was a little bit of both. Cracking is when you dilute the voting power of an opposing party's supporters across many districts. And packing is when you concentrate the opposing party's voting power into one district. So you might say, all right, I'm going to put all these black and brown folks together in one district and allow them to have that that U.S. Representative who might be a black person, right? That's when you pack a district. But you don't spread out the wealth to allow for suburban communities and others to actually have an opportunity to vote for an elected official of their choosing. Okay, so when they couldn't impeach them, then they moved on to the next tactic, which was to change the way you, as very powerful Pennsylvanians, get to put these judges and justices on the bench. Pennsylvania, we are very powerful. We are one of only 7 states in the entire country that we elect every single one of our judges and justices in partisan elections. We are very powerful. This only happens in Illinois, Ohio, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama. I think I'm missing one. So 7 places. And what they wanted to do after failing at impeachment was introduce House Bill 38, which was going to be a constitutional amendment change. It was going to change the Pennsylvania Constitution that I'm holding up for you right now, if you want to take a look at it. Now we have one. Pennsylvania has its own constitution, right? Compared to the United States Constitution, look how much bigger the Pennsylvania Constitution is, right? There are more rights and freedoms granted in the Pennsylvania Constitution than in the U.S. Constitution. And so what they wanted to do was change the Pennsylvania Constitution and our electoral clause so that Pennsylvanians could no longer vote for all 31 statewide judges and justices that sit on the Commonwealth, Superior, and Pennsylvania Supreme Court. That you'd only be able to vote for one judge in each of those courts. So instead of voting for 31, you'd only be able to vote for 3. And they'd be in districts, just like the way the legislators gerrymandered that map. It was going to be legislators who were going to draw these judicial districts to determine where it is you are allowed to select one of these judges from that sit on these benches. And so Why Courts Matter Pennsylvania, Common Cause, Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, we led an effort to stop House Bill 38 becoming a constitutional amendment question on your ballot, because we knew that if we allowed for this question about how we should change our elections for judges and justices to appear on your ballot, Pennsylvanians would likely say yes, because in Pennsylvania, more than 90% of the time, we say yes to anything that's a referendum or a constitutional amendment question on our ballot. And we knew it could not appear on your ballot because we'd be too scared that Pennsylvanians would say yes to something that's going to be very problematic. And so we fought really hard. We formed a fight back table, more than 150 organizations. We all came together, many of us not agreeing on anything else any other time of the year, but we all agreed that judicial gerrymandering was going to be bad. And we threw down so hard, we made the front page of the New York Times. And we made the front page of the New York Times for defeating House Bill 38 and ensuring that it never saw your ballot. And you probably didn't even know what happened. And that's a good thing, too. Behind the scenes, making sure that we weren't going to allow legislators to disrupt our power as voters. All right, so who is it that sits on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court? Who are these people? All right, well, here you go. You've got the seven. So in Pennsylvania, we have 7 Supreme Court justices compared to the 9 that sit in the U.S. Supreme Court. And also compared to the U.S. Supreme Court, our justices have a term. It is 10 years. And after a 10-year term in a partisan election, when they're initially elected, and you see the R or D after their name, after their 10-year term is up, they stand for retention. And we as powerful Pennsylvania voters decide whether or not to retain them for another term, another 10-year term. And that happens in nonpartisan elections, meaning we will not see the D or the R after their name on our November 4th ballot. All we will see is their name and a yes or no box. And we decide as Pennsylvanians whether or not they deserve to remain on the bench for another 10 years. So of the 7 justices we have in Pennsylvania, 5 were elected as Democrats, 2 were elected as Republicans. And this year, 3 of these folks who were elected in 2015 are standing for retention because their 10-year term is up. And they are standing for retention, asking you to let them stay on for another 10-year term. Now, Pennsylvania, we have the oldest courts in the nation. Makes sense. We're one of the oldest states. And should take note here that in the center is Chief Justice Deborah Todd. She is the first woman Chief Justice in Pennsylvania history. It only took 300 years to happen. So we've talked about the various attacks on the Pennsylvania state courts' judicial fairness. First, they tried to impeach them. It didn't work. Then they tried to gerrymander the judiciary and change the way we as powerful voters put them on a bench. And when both of those things didn't work, they've now moved on to an anti-retention campaign that launched on New Year's Eve of last year when a man named Scott Pressler, funded by Elon Musk at the time, and now funded by Jeffrey Yaz, Pennsylvania's richest man, launched an anti-retention campaign on New Year's Eve of last year when they set up a table at a farmer's market in Manheim Township, Lancaster County. And their table had a sign up that said, "Vote no on these 3 Supreme Court justices." And the anti-retention campaign was launched. And this is significant because this is historical. This has never happened, that a major campaign was launched against Supreme Court justices of Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania history, we've been voting for judges and justices the same way since 1968. And since 1968, Pennsylvania has only not retained 1 Supreme Court justice. Justice Nigro lost retention in 2005. And not because there was some anti-retention campaign launched against him. It was because in 2005, those of you who have been around since then and paying attention to local and state politics, there was a midnight pay raise that went out to the 3 branches of government in Harrisburg that didn't get a lot of sunshine, and people didn't know what was happening. And they were very upset that the legislative, executive, and judicial branch all gave themselves pay raises at midnight. And the next possible election that popped up after that midnight pay raise was the judicial election. And Pennsylvanians took all of their anger about that out on the next person they saw on their ballot, and that was Justice Nigro. That was one of the main reasons why he was not retained in 2005. All right, so these are your 3 Supreme Court justices marked here with the red asterisks. So you have Christine Donahue out of Pittsburgh, you have Kevin Dougherty out of Philadelphia, and David Wecht, also out of Pittsburgh. These three justices were elected 10 years ago. They all three are standing for retention. Again, you will see them on your ballot on November 4th or before. If you're voting by mail, you will not see the D after their name. You will only see their name. You will only see a yes box and a no box. And you need to decide what you want to do at that point. I want to also say what will happen if the three are not retained. Adrian, you want to ask a question?
Yes, I wanted to mention that in your last slide that it just went out of my brain. Can you do this slide? That nope, it's gone. I'm sorry.
No? All right. Well, we have another opportunity here. What I
Okay.
want to say is what would happen if the three justices are not retained? If Pennsylvanians do something very strange, which they typically have never done before, if they decide to vote no on all three of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices standing for retention, they're not running against anybody else. There's no challenger to them. There's no candidate running against them. This is just standing for retention. If they are not retained to the bench, they will be removed from the bench, and no one is there to replace them. The only way that you can replace them is if, in an interim role, an interim time period, Governor Josh Shapiro and the Republican led state Senate agree on a nominee to fill the role in an interim position. And if any of you appreciate the Powerball when it hits $1 billion, you probably have a better shot at winning the Powerball than you do having Josh Shapiro and the Pennsylvania Senate, 2/3 of the Pennsylvania Senate, agree on the same individual or three individuals to sit on the bench, because the Scott Presslers of the world and others are banking on an anti-retention campaign that will lead to an election in 2027. Because what happens is if they are not retained and there is no interim nominee suitable for everybody, the seats are vacant for 2 years until the next judicial election in November of 2027. And that means we have a bare quorum. That means we have 4 Supreme Court justices instead of 7. We'll be left with 2 Democrats and 2 Republicans. They likely probably won't agree on so many things, including the outcome of the 2026 election results and other things that could come along in this 2-year time period. And no decisions would be made at the Pennsylvania Supreme Court level. Could you imagine? It's like a judicial crisis. 2 full years, 2 plus, because they wouldn't even take the bench until January of 2028. So that is a judicial crisis that we would experience here in the Commonwealth if all 3 justices are not retained. So let's talk about the levels of the courts, right? Because, and speaking with the NAACP, I think that we know that so many in our community have a negative connotation of courts. You know, we think about maybe the criminal justice aspect of the court system and not so much the fact that particularly the appellate courts grant rights and freedoms, not just take your freedom away. And so when you think about the minor courts, this is where you go when you have speeding tickets to pay for, maybe you have a minor landlord-tenant dispute. The minor courts are filled with lots of judges, more than 500. In the minor courts, they serve a 6-year term compared to all the other courts that have a 10-year term. And here's a fun fact for you about the magisterial courts, a minor court, is that you do not need to be a lawyer, have gone to law school, even gone to college to become a magisterial court judge. You just need to get elected, and then once elected, pass what I call the Kim Kardashian baby bar, and you too can become a magisterial court judge in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The majority of magisterial court judges are former police officers. It's like a retirement job for them. They're supposed to know the law. And so they use this as an opportunity to become judges. And that's absolutely something that happens here in the Commonwealth. Now, we call them minor courts, but when they can sentence you to a few years in jail, it's not all that minor. Now, any cases that can't be heard by the minor courts are then taken up to the courts of common pleas. And so if the minor courts can't handle it, it goes to the primary trial courts. This is when, if you ever received jury duty, the likelihood is it was for the court of common pleas. Now, the minor courts are elected by districts. And so if you live in Coatesville, you have a Coatesville Magisterial Court. If you live in Westchester, you have a Westchester Magisterial Court. You live in Montgomery County, or if you live, like in Narberth, there's one in Narberth, right? They're elected by districts. The Court of Common Pleas are elected by county. So you have your Chester County Court of Common Pleas, you have your Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas, your Delaware County Court of Common Pleas. This level hears more serious cases. They'll handle child custody disputes, more serious landlord-tenant disputes, property disputes, civil and criminal cases. Again, a 10-year term. So after they've been on the bench for 10 years, Pennsylvanians decide whether or not they should remain on the bench for another 10-year term. Superior and Commonwealth Court, these are our intermediate appellate courts. These folks are going to hear appeals from all the other lower courts. And so if your case, there was, some shenanigans maybe that happened within your case and you want to appeal your case, it'll be heard by either the Superior Court or the Commonwealth Court. Now, the Commonwealth Court, uniquely Pennsylvanian, right? Commonwealth, Pennsylvania Commonwealth. This court hears cases of agency. It'll hear cases about clean air and water, which is guaranteed to us by this Pennsylvania Constitution. Our Pennsylvania Constitution guarantees us clean air and pure water. And if you're not getting it, then you need to file a case here, because the Pennsylvania Constitution says you're guaranteed clean air, pure water, and a beautiful scenic environment. Guaranteed in the Pennsylvania Constitution. Other cases heard by the Commonwealth Court also relate to the Pennsylvania Constitution, which says that our children should receive an efficient and thorough public education. And it was the Commonwealth Court not too long ago that ruled, at the insistence of the Supreme Court, who said, let this go to trial, that the way that we fund public schools in Pennsylvania is unconstitutional. We all know NAACP how public schools are funded. They're funded by property tax. And if you live on one side of City Avenue in Overbrook, you're going to get a very different public education than someone who lives a mile away on the other side of City Avenue who goes to Lower Merion High School. And we determine what type of education Pennsylvania students receive based upon property tax. So if your house is $100,000, you're going to get a $100,000 education. If your house is $1 million house, you might get $1 million public education in the Commonwealth. And that is how it was until the Commonwealth Court said it was unconstitutional and now has ruled it that way, which means the Pennsylvania legislature, who hasn't done it yet, need to figure out how to equitably fund public schools without it being based on property tax. So if there's a call to action for this Zoom room tonight, it is to reach out to state legislators and find out what are they working on, because right now they need to figure out how to fairly fund public education. So that's an example of a case heard by the Commonwealth Court. Superior Court will also hear civil and criminal cases, appeal convictions go there. And then the final level, again, Powerball odds, to have your case heard by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. And again, 7 justices, 10-year terms. Okay, I'm coming to a close here. I'm going to close this out with some of my favorite people. This is Miss Vivian Applewhite. Miss Vivian Applewhite out of Philadelphia. This is her picture in her 90s. In her 90s, she was the lead litigant in a case. It was a case that in 2012 was going to be problematic for Miss Vivian Applewhite. It was going to stop her from having a perfect record of voting in every single election since FDR. It was going to be a voter ID bill that was moving through the halls of Harrisburg that the Commonwealth Court of Pennsylvania said was unconstitutional. It was against our election clause. And it was going to be unconstitutional because it was going to restrict Miss Vivian Applewhite and it was going to stop her from voting. A more restrictive ID was going to be required, one that she would not be able to ascertain. Now, if we look at Miss Vivian Applewhite pictured here in her 90s, we can probably assume that she's not driving. And so she's probably not going to the DMV. We could probably also assume that she's not burning up the internet and able to get online and get the type of ID that would be required of her. Not only that, but as a Black woman born in the early 1900s, she was probably not born in a hospital, therefore probably doesn't have a birth certificate or can easily get it. And this was going to be the type of ID required of her that she was not going to be able to get and it was going to stop her from voting. And it was the Commonwealth Court, Applewhite versus Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, that ruled that there is no need for a more restrictive voter ID in Pennsylvania. We already have one on the books. They are working. Only citizens of this country are being registered to vote and voting. Period. This is a
That's
picture of
me
Miss
in that
Vivian.
picture.
That is Miss
Voter
Vivian
ID does
Applewhite.
not stop fraud. That's me.
Right, right. And this is a picture of Miss Vivian Applewhite on her 100th birthday. She lived a long, beautiful life. She passed away not too long ago. And we thank her for being the lead litigant. And I show you these because we have to keep in mind that these are real human beings' lives impacted by decisions our courts are making. These are the courts granting rights and freedoms, not just the courts in a carceral system putting us behind bars. And so we have to discern between the two. And also, what we can't do is take any anger we may have with the United States Supreme Court out on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. They are two very different bodies, and they are behaving very differently in these times. This is Kiera out of Delaware County. And Kiera out of Delaware County did what we are always told to do, which is if I request a vote by mail ballot and it didn't arrive in time, I go to the polls on election day and I request a provisional ballot. And that's exactly what Kiera did. She went to the polls, she voted her provisional ballot, like so many others did, and days later received notification that someone was challenging her provisional ballot. They thought her provisional ballot shouldn't count. And it was the Pennsylvania Supreme Court that said Kiera's provisional ballot should count, and they struck down any attempt to throw out valid provisional ballots. That is what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court did. This is another reason why you have so many folks upset with them, wanting to try to impeach them or change the way we vote for them. And Kiera Tucker's ballot counted, her vote counted, and we all know the outcome of the 2020 election as the entire world waited on Pennsylvania and our election results. So as I close up, you'll see that I'm someone who believes in facts and science and all the things. And so I want to provide for you some great resources of where I go to get a lot of my information. One place that I love to go to is Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts, pmconline.org. They're a nonpartisan organization that will provide some voter guides and other things for you to take a look at. We don't always agree on all issues. Pennsylvanians for Modern Courts are actually not in favor of us voting for judges anymore. They'd rather we have a different system. But they have some great resources here on voter guides. Other places I love to go is afj.org, allianceforjustice.org, afj.org. They do great work on federal courts and state courts. I get a lot of my information from them. And then you can always go to the standbys, the pacourts.us. You can go to the judiciary.senate.gov. You can go to pacer.uscourts.gov. All the places you can go to get some great information. And with that, I'm going to open it up to questions and answers. I'm going to say go birds.
I am putting some links in the chat to check your voter registration status, to apply for your mail-in ballot, and to check out the NAACP voter guide, which has a ton of information, and also to join the NAACP, our Main Line Branch 2270. And they're all in the chat right now.
Okay. Well, I am here. And if anyone has any questions for me, sometimes I have answers.
Jen asked, what is the last day to file for a mail-in ballot?
It would be the 28th. And I recommend you do it before then because you want it to hit your house in the mail. And I heard a story that someone received their vote by mail ballot August after the election in November. So request it as soon as you can and get that and vote it and return it as soon as you can. Yes, Jan.
Okay. I actually did receive my mail-in ballot. Someone asked me today when the last day was, so I want to get that information to her. And we were told to get that mail-in ballot filled out and mailed back as quickly as possible. And I'm wondering also whether they're going to be the satellite satellite locations to to basically hand in our mail-in ballot as well, as well as the drop-off boxes.
Yeah. It does depend on what county you live in. Adrian, I know you know the answer here.
Yeah,
Okay.
in Montgomery County, there'll be two drop boxes, one at Ludington Library and the other one at the satellite office at 925 Montgomery Avenue in Narberth. I even have the address.
And yes, it must be in the hands by 8 p.m. on election night. It can't like arrive later. It can't be mailed by and arrive later. It must be in the hands of election officials by 8 p.m. on election night.
Postmarks do not count.
No. I see Miss Penny.
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. So
Sure.
back to history. My feeling is that the youth of today, there are many parts of the youth of today who have no concept of history. They don't understand civil rights, whether they are people of color or they're Caucasian, they just don't see it the way someone who's in her 70s sees it. So what do you suggest that we can do to help encourage young people to vote?
Yeah.
Register to vote. And then there's the next step, of course, to get them to vote.
Yeah. All right, that's a loaded question.
I know it
Here,
is.
so here we go. So our organization has helped more than 55,000 Pennsylvanians get registered to vote. The overwhelming majority, more than 65% of them under the age of 35. How do we do it? We go to college campuses, we go to high schools, we go to places where young people hang out, playgrounds, wherever they may be, we try to be there. Now, here's the thing when you talk about history. It used to be a winning argument to say your ancestors fought and died for your right to vote. Let's get registered to vote. That is no longer a winning argument at all.
Nope.
That's enough for me. You can tell me somebody got bloody on a Sunday, and that's definitely going to move me. But that is not moving today's youth. They don't care.
I know.
Right? And this is the thing we have to think about because we don't, as an organization, we don't shade or shame these young people. Because if you think about an 18-year-old today, the last 8 years of their life, formative years, all they have seen out of politics is chaos.
Yep.
And they're like, I want no parts of this.
Exactly.
And so that's on us, right? Because that is what we've allowed to happen for these young people. And so for us as an organization, and what we do when we're engaging young people who say, I'm just not into politics, that we break it down for them. We say, okay, what do you care about then? And when they say, oh, I care about the environment, I care about the fact that my tuition is too high, we say, oh, well, then you do care about politics because all these things are political. And then we do a lot of just listening to what it is they have to say. And then you have to be pretty good and up on your issues to be able to counter these conversations because this younger generation, they have access to more information than we ever did. I remember doing my school reports with microfiche, and these folks have AI and everything else, and they can get anything they want in moments. And so if you are going to be encountering 18, 19, 20-year-olds, you're going to have to know a little bit about some things to overcome their objections. And that is really where it is right now. We have to overcome their objections and do that by a lot more listening than a lot more of us just talking at them because they have seen some things and they are not excited about joining either major political party. I will tell you as an organization that's registered all those people, 24% since the last several years, 24% of those we've registered to vote choose not to belong to either major political party. They choose to be unaffiliated. Even when told that in Pennsylvania, a closed primary state, they cannot vote in the May primary election, they still choose to be unaffiliated, do not want to belong to either major political party. They are over it. And so we have to do a lot of listening, find out what it is. We just ask the question, well, what do you care about? And we let them rip and let them go. And then we try to counter with, well, this is why you need to vote then. And it's not always a winning argument. You know, we were just on Penn State's campus this past weekend in Center County. We registered 201 students on a weekend. And we had to turn away at least 100 students who had no idea what the last four of their social security number was. So we couldn't register them and they couldn't get mom to text them the number. So, you know, it's a lot of civic education that is needed. We know it's been taken out of schools.
Yep.
We have teachers scared to lose their jobs if they teach it. And so that's what we spend so much of our time on is civic education. We just talk a lot about civics right now. And that's the only way that it is working in this moment.
And so maybe there's a way for people like myself because I will remember what you said, and I've already done some of that, and I agree with you totally. But maybe there's a way just to get 3 or 4 bullet points. Like I have to remember to ask the people in my life, what is important to you? Because I have heard young Black men say, what has this country ever done for me and my people? And what do I want to do? What do I want to vote for? And like you
Yeah.
said, the people in their 20s, what have they seen?
Mhm.
And they don't understand the victory of having Barack Obama win because they have no historical perspective.
Nope. They don't. All they've seen the last several years is chaos, and they
Hmm.
want no parts of it.
Right. And who
And I'm,
would?
and I, yeah, who does? I mean, I don't want any parts of it, in my age. So, there's a lot to be done here, and we're going to lose a generation of voters if we can't get them back in. And when you have folks that are sowing seeds of discontent and chaos, it manifests what it is they want, which is people to say, I don't want any of this mess, and I'm staying home.
So we have to keep fighting the good fight.
You do, and you just have to do a lot of listening. And I wish there were 3 bullet points. If there were 3 bullet points, then I wouldn't have a job. My job is to organize myself out of a job. So if there were 3 bullet points, I wouldn't have a job, and I'd be happy about it. But there's not. There are no 3 bullet points.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, not for that fact, there's no
Yeah.
voice, but thank you for your presentation.
Yeah. Yeah. There are no bullet points.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just want to let people know also that if you live in Delco or Chester County, um, in our voter guide are links to those county voter services offices, and you can find their Dropbox locations and satellite offices there. So that's in our NAACP voter guide. The link is in the chat.
Adrian,
Yes.
this is Diana.
Hi, I
um,
recognize your voice.
I just wanted to say one other thing that what I try to do for those young adults or those college students who are involved and do know a little bit about what's going on, I encourage them to use their voices to reach their peers
Mhm.
because their peers are more likely to listen to them than us. And so for those who will, that's one of the things that I try to do.
That's
Absolutely, absolutely agree with that. To say that the best person to register a young person is a young person. The best person to
Hmm.
register somebody who lives in North Philly is somebody from North Philly.
Yep.
And so that is really important to do. We as an organization, we don't even really utilize volunteers because number one, we believe in paying people for their work, but we also want to make sure that our communities are matching the communities that we're centering, and we want to have people who live in an area register their own neighbors because that is the best way. So yeah, I can tell you as an organization, our young people on the team, they do a great job of going to college campuses and registering young people on a college campus. I don't want to take away anything though from older folks, right? Because I was just on Penn State's campus, and I will tell you this: number one, Penn State. I was very nervous I'm very nervous for anyone who's sending their child to Penn State there in University Park, because at no point did I see campus security in 2 days. That's number one. Um, the other thing I'll say about that is I can't tell you how many kids I registered to vote who wanted to hug me after I registered them to vote, like they needed hugs. Like these kids out there need some hugs. So, sometimes it's not a bad thing. When we went out there, we were an older group that went out to Penn State this past weekend, and we were all out there hugging on these kids who were asking us for the hugs. So, don't think that just because you're older that you can't talk to young people because Miss Connie Santos on our team, she's probably the most senior in our organization, and she does a heck of a job doing voter registration because they see her as grandmom, and they can't turn down grandmom when she asks them to get registered to vote.
okay. So if there's no other questions, I am if Jamil is still on, hold on, let me look.
He's here in the room. He can hear you.
Okay, what did he like to do? Kadida is our keynote speaker at our Freedom Fund Luncheon, which is happening on October 18th. And if you would put the link in the chat, and also have Jamil or you say a couple words about the luncheon.
Sure. You want to go? Perfect. We are very excited to have first good evening, everyone. We are very excited to have Kadida as our keynote speaker this year. We are looking for a great word to come from her and great information. Saturday, October the 18th at 11:30. We look forward to seeing everyone there. We want to act now and we're going to resist and we're not going to resist. We also are going to have our silent auction taking place. And great news that we're going to start the auction a little early. I mean, a week early. So the auction will be going online live this Saturday. We got approved for it just about a couple hours ago. So everything's being set up now, and we will start the auction a week early. So it will be a live. The link will be on our website, and it'll still go on at the luncheon, but we will be live. So we're looking forward to a great time. So look forward to seeing you.
And you forgot something. Madeline Dean will be joining us. So I'm excited for that as well. So it's going to be a good time that day. So hopefully people can come out and network with one another, get all of this important information from Kadida, and then spread the word. And also, if there are volunteer opportunities with your organization, Kadida, just let us know.
Okay. I'm ready to give a barn burner. I'm ready to give a barn burner here because we need it. So I'm getting my thoughts together so I can start writing up some things. I'll talk a little bit about what I discussed tonight, but I have some new things to share, and I hope that we all leave after the keynote really inspired to continue to do this work because we must have joy in this moment, right? This is why you got people out there learning the line dances and clapping with the fans, right? Because as a community, we have seen all of this before and we know how to survive it. There's others who have never seen something like this before and they're trying to figure out how to navigate the world like this. And so there has to be joy to maintain this movement, and we have to maintain this movement. And I can't wait to see you all on the 18th and hopefully burn down the barn.
And
Okay.
if I can ask you, what time are you speaking at the state convention?
I'm still waiting to hear, but I think it is going to be towards the dinner.
Okay, so I know what ticket to buy.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll let you know for sure. I'll let you know for sure soon. I'm still waiting to hear. I got an email out to them right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Cool.
Yep.
And so, Kadida, I want to thank you so much for taking time to present to us and give us all this fabulous information. And yes, we have applause coming. And
Yes.
just thank you so much. Thank you
All
so
right.
much.
No, it's my pleasure. And sorry I had to jump early off of this one. I have another one right now that I'm going to for some women in Philadelphia. So I'm going to do that. And then I have, like I said, like another 27 more of these to go before election day. So I'm putting miles on my car. I'm putting steps in on my step count. And I'm enjoying this.
Keep your voice,
We'll get your
I'm
membership.
drinking lots of water. I'm drinking lots of water. I'm trying to hydrate and do all the things.
We'll have your membership ready for you at the luncheon.
Do that. Let's do that. Let's do that at the luncheon.
Okay, especially before you get to state, but we want you representing us for state. So
okay, we'll do. We'll do. We'll do. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Thanks everybody for having me.
Thank
I'll see you
Thank
soon.
you.
Thanks so much.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.